During World War II, aerial campaigns became a vital anchor of military operations. Most ground and naval attacks extensively used aircraft for reconnaissance and bombing missions. The most crucial aerial asset of the European theater was the bomber. Protected by escort fighters, the American B-17s became an icon of sheer American firepower and innovative technological advances. However, once the war ended, thousands of B-17s were quickly sold, sent to the scrapyard, or used for experimental testing after being replaced by superior aircraft and military technologies. As the Cold War tensions increased, with the palpable fear of a nuclear war, some B-17s became an essential asset for testing the accuracy, speed, and damage of American missiles and other defensive systems. One of those was Project Nike, a military program whose objective was protecting American cities from nuclear threats. An integral part of this defensive system was the Nike Ajax, the first surface-to-air missile, better known as SAM. And if the US was going to be ready to take on Soviet bombers, they would have to blow up a bunch of B-17s for practice. One of the most beloved and iconic bombers of World War II was the B-17 Flying Fortress. Loved by the pilots who flew her in World War II and historical aviation enthusiasts, the B-17 could drop a massive payload and take a beating from enemy fighters without any problems. It had good defensive capabilities to handle its own, excellent range, and outstanding accuracy for delivering the bomb load wherever it was required. The B-17 was so efficient that almost 13,000 were produced, serving bravely during World War II and beyond. After the war ended, however, there was a surplus of the Flying Fortresses. Most were either sold off or scrapped. The few that remained were kept in the military as drone aircraft for US military testing. 100 Flying Fortresses were converted to drones by the US Air Force for atmospheric sampling after atomic tests, or as targets for newly developed missiles or defensive systems. Most of those B-17s, alongside the Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star and other Boeing RB-47 Stratojet bombers, were converted into drone aircraft during the early years of the Cold War. All of these aircraft were incorporated into the 3,205th Drone Group unit within the US Air Force. The unit operated obsolete aircraft throughout the 50s as radio-controlled aerial targets for various tests and other experimental tests. The B-17 Flying Fortresses that were chosen for these tests were designated as QB-17s. They were converted to drones and used for atomic testing or targets for surface-to-air missiles. In the early 1950s, the fear of a nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union had the world at a knife's edge. Both countries possessed atomic weapons, and the Germans had laid the foundation of long-range missiles by creating the V-2 rocket during World War II. During the post-war years, with German scientists captured by the US and Russia, both countries had developed the possibility of launching intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, from thousands of miles away. Consequently, at the end of World War II, an American company, Bell Laboratories, began developing a line-of-sight anti-aircraft missile system. This new weapon could neutralize enemy bombers and rockets from a safe distance before they could hit their target. The program was called Project Nike, and its primary purpose was to defend American cities and other areas from the possibility of being hit by enemy missiles and bombers. It received the name Nike after the goddess of victory from Greek mythology. Under the Army Anti-Aircraft Command, major US cities and other military facilities were proposed as sites for the implementation of the Nike defensive system. The project delivered the United States' first operational anti-aircraft missile system, the Nike Ajax, in 1953. This missile was designed to strike bomber aircraft flying at high subsonic speeds and altitudes above 50,000 feet. Ajax was initially deployed in the US to defend American cities from Soviet bomber attacks. However, as time passed, the missiles were deployed overseas to protect US bases. It was sold to various Allied forces as well. Some examples remained in use until the 1970s, before the Vietnam War ended. The Ajax's solid rocket booster would become the pillar for future rockets, including the Nike Hercules missile and NASA's Nike Smoke rocket, used for upper atmosphere research. To test the effectiveness of the Nike Ajax, two B-17s were used as targets. The first successful Nike missile test happened in November 1951. In this U.S. military footage recorded during the test, an iconic B-17 Flying Fortress appears in the sky. In the next cut, an Ajax missile is seen. After a few seconds, it launches with tremendous speed straight to its target. Seconds later, the Ajax hits the target successfully with explosive force. The B-17 is struck in the center of its fuselage, and it bursts into flames instantly. At the same time, it begins to crumble piece by piece. The Nike Ajax test was successful. Nearly 250 missile sites were built up to 1962. Placed in circular defensive rings or on priority targets, they became a last line of defense in America.